Overseas pickup for geeks. 5 ground rules. All right, so I'm working on a new series, and this is going to be some of the experiences that I've come to understand in my 20 years living in Asia about some of the do's and don'ts of how to go about picking up women or girls, okay? And some of this is going to be introduced further in depth on my Patreon, which I'll be introducing in the next month or two to come. But I want to lay down some ground rules so that anyone that's listening to the series is going to understand the context of which I'm talking about. And I want to preface this by saying that, we're not all Chads. Some of us are bookworms. I'm a bookworm. I'm not really good at the game stuff, right? And so, for guys that are tall and they stick out and you're muscular, boom, you don't have to do much. But for some of us, especially if you come to a place where people are more reserved, which I'm in Japan, so that's certainly the case, you're going to have some strategies if it's really important for you to, get yourself out there. And so I want to introduce a couple of points before I lay down this series, okay? So ground rule number one is you have to understand that some women, they're not going to date foreigners, okay? So it's not you. You don't take that personal. Let me explain. There are some girls that simply won't date you because you're a foreigner. And for whatever reason, family reasons, their own reasons, they're just not going to date a foreigner. There are some girls that will have sex with you in a love hotel, and they just don't want anyone to know that they're having sex with you. There are some girls who will date you. They'll date you. They'll date you for an extended period of time. They don't want to marry a foreigner. And then there are some girls that will marry a foreigner. And you have to understand that these 4 distinct groups exist pretty much in any country that you go to, right? And of course, depending on the girl and depending on how you look, your race, or her preferences, those things probably will evolve from girl to girl. But understand, when you're dating outside of your culture, there are simply going to be some instances where, it's just not going to happen for reasons that are outside of your control. So remember, if you run into a situation like that, don't take that personal. That's not you. It's not her. It's just one of the things that happens in culture, okay? The second thing I want to remind you guys is, look, if you go around acting like a sex tourist, people are going to look at you like one. When you see the videos of guys and they're throwing up money in the air and stupid stuff, look, if you don't see other people in the culture acting that way, you shouldn't act that way. And if you're going around with just where the girls at, just imagine for a second that every man walking around on this planet is not being led around by his lower member. There are actually men that have, missions in life, and they have goals and have stuff to do, and they're not spending every free minute of their lives looking for, women. So if you go to a place acting like that's the end all be all, people are going to treat you accordingly. And so I would have a mission bigger than just getting girls. You'll have an overall better experience, okay? So I'll put it that way. The third thing I want to say is that one of the real benefits that you have is that if you're in the process of learning a language, it gives you a really big benefit in not just meeting people, but making social mistakes. So, and I'll talk about a lot of this in the series of videos I'm going to make, but when you're learning the language, it gives you a whole lot of possibilities in terms of starting conversations, in terms of getting people's attention, just kind of playing with the world around you, because sometimes you may know a little bit more than people think you may know, or you may not know as much, and that interaction can become a really interesting one, right? And so if you get a good enough hold of not just the language, but the culture also, you can use those kind of like bridges or those gaps, and they might not think I know this word, but I know this word, and you can make a little kind of joke out of it. And that joke could be like the the beginning of a relationship with a group of guys, a best friend, or even someone that you might date. And just realize that if you make a sincere attempt at learning the language, you're going to open a lot of doors to friendships, to conversations, to places that you'll get access to, a lot of different things that simply won't be the case if you're just going to a certain place looking for sexual gratification, right? And so there are a lot of very interesting strategies you can use when you're studying a language to, there are some interesting things you'll do. We'll get to that. Fourth thing I want to tell you guys is you got to learn the culture. You got to learn when and where to approach. So if you are kind of like a bulldozer and you see a really pretty lady and you just make a beeline to her and ask her out, it really kind of shows that you don't really know or appreciate the culture. There are places where it's 100% okay to do that, and there are places where it's basically 0% okay to do that. And then there are places where it's in between. And so it's really good to kind of watch the culture and get a feel for the culture so that you're not acting in a way that is really out of bounds, that's distasteful. And so, and one of the more difficult things about it is if you're not paying enough attention to the culture, you can't see it. And these things change over from culture to culture. A good example, in America, the cashiers will be a certain way. They'll be super friendly or they'll be kind of distant. But like in an American setting, it's totally okay to flirt with the cashier. That varies from country to country. And there are certain places where you can do that. And there are certain countries where it will seem like flirtation, but it's just them doing their jobs. And you have to pay enough attention to the culture that you're in to know the difference. Now, last thing I want to say is you really need to know who you are or where you are and who you're talking to. And so you'll see I've seen a lot of videos, especially for like guys that go to like Bangkok, Thailand, whatever, and like they're getting pulled on by women. They're like, oh man, these women love me. And it's not really that. That's not what it really is. Those are, you can imagine what might be in play there. But you have to have a good feel of like, what is the atmosphere? What is allowed? What is the social norm? And what are outside of those norms? You also need to pay attention to, it's not like pretty girls don't have boyfriends. You have to pay attention to little stuff like, is there a ring on her finger? Is there a guy around? How did she get to the venue that she's at? You got to look at a lot of different things to just be sure. Because you have to also understand, for guys that are going to these countries where, tons of foreigners are coming in and out, either, there are certain possibilities, but one possibility is a guy that has a good looking girlfriend gets tired of foreigners hitting on his girlfriend. And so if you just see the pretty lady and you walk up and hit on her, and the guy's at the bar getting a drink and you don't pay attention to him, he might come back with something more to say than just, get away from my female, right? So it's really good for you to be perceptive and get a good feel for who you're talking to. What kind of setting are you in? Is this woman paying attention to you in a way that suggests that she's really interested in you? Or is that kind of her job? Or is she flirting because, she's bored with her boyfriend who's sitting at the counter right behind her? Because remember now, if you get into something with that guy in that bar, the police are going to side with the guy, okay? So you need to just be aware of where you are and who you're dealing with. Now, with that said, there are a lot of really big advantages that we have as foreigners when we're in a foreign country and we want to become part of the culture and learn the language, and we can use that as a way of, meeting people and meeting women, okay? And I'm going to talk a series of videos, and it's going to be a lot of videos because I want to talk about a lot of different things, but I just want to remind you guys that it's an advantage. It is a great advantage if you are taking true, honest interest in their culture, because you will have people volunteering to help you. And when you have such people willing to help you, there are a lot of different ways you can go with that. But anyways, guys, this is the beginning of a series of videos, and I wanted to say thank you guys for listening. Please like, subscribe, and please comment on the video, and I will talk to you guys on the next one. Thank you guys for listening, and please feel free to comment down below. Thank you guys.